The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Anderson Hall as students shuffled into the lecture room. Professor Gregory Hammond stood at the front, his weathered hands arranging papers on the old wooden desk. He had been teaching quantum physics at Zenith University for 42 years, and he could spot trouble the moment it walked through his door. Today, trouble came in the form of a young man who slipped into the back row with barely a sound. Marcus Cole had dark skin, tired eyes, and the kind of slouch that spoke of too many late nights. Gregory noticed him immediately because the boy had only attended 3 lectures all semester, yet somehow he was still enrolled in the class. Gregory began his lecture on quantum entanglement, his chalk scratching across the blackboard in familiar patterns. The equations flowed from his hand like old friends, each symbol a piece of the puzzle that described how particles could remain connected across impossible distances. Behind him, 40 students scribbled notes, their pens racing to keep up with his explanations. All except one. Marcus Cole sat with his eyes half closed, his head propped up on one hand, looking like he might fall asleep at any moment. Gregory felt his jaw tighten. He had no patience for students who wasted their education, who treated his classroom like a hotel for napping. He had seen too many young people throw away opportunities that others would kill for. The professor stopped mid-sentence, his chalk hovering above an incomplete equation. The room fell silent as students sensed the shift in atmosphere. Gregory turned slowly, his eyes fixing on the young man in the back row. The silence stretched out like a rubber band pulled to its breaking point. Students exchanged nervous glances knowing what was coming. Gregory Hammond was known for his sharp tongue and his intolerance for laziness. More than one student had fled his class in tears after being called out in front of their peers. "You there?" Gregory said, his voice cutting through the quiet like a blade. "The young man attempting to use my lecture as a lullaby." Marcus opened his eyes slowly, meeting the professor's gaze without flinching. Around him, other students shifted in their seats, grateful they were not the target of Hammond's attention. "Stand up," Gregory commanded. "Come to the front of the room." Marcus hesitated for only a heartbeat before rising from his seat. He was tall, perhaps 6 feet 2 inches, with broad shoulders and hands that looked more suited to basketball than theoretical physics. He walked down the aisle between the rows of desks, his footsteps echoing in the silent room. The other students watched him like spectators at a public execution. Gregory gestured toward the blackboard, where his half-finished equation waited. "Since you find my teaching so boring that you cannot stay awake, perhaps you can enlighten the rest of us. Solve this." Marcus looked at the board, his eyes scanning the symbols and numbers. The equation dealt with the mathematical description of 2 entangled particles, a problem that most students in the class would struggle with for hours. Gregory crossed his arms, waiting for the boy to admit defeat, to apologize and slink back to his seat in shame. Instead, Marcus picked up a piece of chalk from the tray. The young man studied the equation for perhaps 30 seconds, his lips moving slightly as if he were talking himself through the problem. Then he began to write. His handwriting was cramped and messy, but the symbols were correct. He worked through the first step, then the second, his chalk moving with increasing confidence across the board. Gregory watched, his expression shifting from smug satisfaction to confusion. The boy was not just guessing. He was solving the problem correctly. More than that, he was taking an approach that Gregory himself had only discovered 3 years earlier, buried in a research paper with limited circulation. Marcus worked through the equation methodically, each step flowing naturally from the one before. He simplified complex expressions, substituted values, and rearranged terms with the ease of someone who had done this 1,000 times. The other students leaned forward in their seats trying to follow his work. Some of them were taking notes, copying his solution even though they did not fully understand it. Gregory felt something cold settle in his stomach. This was not the work of a lazy student. This was the work of someone who understood quantum mechanics at a fundamental level. 5 minutes later, Marcus set down the chalk and stepped back from the board. Behind him, a complete and elegant solution stretched across the blackboard in white lines. He did not say anything, did not wait for praise or acknowledgement. He simply turned and began walking back to his seat. The room remained silent, every eye moving between the solution on the board and the young man who had created it. Gregory stood frozen, his mind racing. He had intended to humiliate this student, to teach him a lesson about respect and effort. Instead, he had just witnessed something remarkable. "Class dismissed," Gregory said quietly. The words seemed to break a spell. Students began gathering their belongings, whispers spreading through the room like wildfire. "Who is that guy?" someone muttered. "How did he do that so fast?" another voice asked. Gregory raised his hand, silencing the chatter. "Mr. Cole, remain behind." Marcus stopped at the door, his hand on the frame. The other students filed past him, some casting curious glances his way. Within a minute, the room was empty except for the professor and the student. Gregory walked to the blackboard, studying the solution more carefully now. It was flawless. Not a single error, not a wasted step. The approach was sophisticated, showing deep understanding of quantum field theory and mathematical physics. This was not undergraduate-level work. This was the kind of solution that doctoral candidates struggled to produce. "Where did you learn that method?" Gregory asked, his voice stripped of its earlier harshness. Marcus shrugged, his expression neutral. "Library. Your paper from 3 years back. Journal of Advanced Quantum Mechanics, Volume 47, Issue 3. Gregory felt his eyebrows rise. That paper had been cited exactly twice in the entire scientific community. Most physicists had never heard of it, let alone read it. It was highly technical, filled with dense mathematics that even experienced researchers found challenging. "You read that paper," Gregory said slowly. Marcus nodded. "Read it, understood it, applied it." The professor moved closer, studying the young man with new eyes. "Then why are you failing my class?" The question hung in the air between them. Marcus met his gaze steadily. "I am not failing. I have a C-. With your attendance record, you should be failing," Gregory countered. Marcus was quiet for a moment before answering. "I work 3 jobs, Professor. Night security at the medical center, 10 at night until 6 in the morning. Weekend stock work at the grocery on Palmer Street, 8-hour shifts both days. Tutoring math for high school kids whenever I can get appointments." He shifted his backpack on his shoulder. "Full scholarship covers tuition, but not books, not rent, not food, not life. I come to class when I can. I read your textbook when I have time. I do every problem set you assign." Gregory felt something twist in his chest. 3 jobs. This young man was working 3 jobs and still managing to stay enrolled. Still managing to learn advanced physics. Still managing to read obscure research papers in whatever spare moments he could find. "And yet you found time to read journal articles," Gregory said. Marcus smiled for the first time, a quick flash that transformed his tired face. 2 in the morning, security desk gets real quiet. Not much happens at a medical center during those hours, I read. Textbooks, papers, whatever I can access through the university database. Gregory walked back to his desk, his mind churning. He had spent 42 years teaching physics, and he had seen perhaps a dozen students with real genius. The kind of raw talent that could not be taught, only nurtured. Marcus Cole had that talent. It was obvious in the way he had approached the problem, in the confidence of his solution, in his casual mention of reading advanced research papers during security shifts. "Be in my office tomorrow at 3, Gregory said. "I have a proposition for you." Marcus adjusted his backpack. "I work at 3. "Not anymore," the professor replied. "Not if you are interested in doing real physics instead of barely passing my class." "What kind of proposition?" Marcus asked, his voice cautious. "The kind that might change your life," Gregory said. "The kind that might change all of our lives. Come to my office tomorrow. 3rd floor, room 314. If you decide you would rather stock shelves and work security, that is your choice. But I think you want more than that. I think you want to know what you are truly capable of." Marcus stood in the doorway for a long moment, weighing the offer. Finally, he nodded. 3 o'clock. I will be there." Marcus arrived at Professor Hammond's office at exactly 3 o'clock the next afternoon. He had called his supervisor at the grocery store and asked for the day off, something he rarely did because he needed every dollar he could earn. The office was on the 3rd floor of Anderson Hall, tucked away at the end of a corridor lined with faded photographs of previous physics department chairs. The door was open when Marcus knocked, and Gregory looked up from his computer screen with an expression that might have been anticipation. "Come in." "Close the door," Gregory said. Marcus stepped inside and shut the door behind him. The office was exactly what he expected from a man who had spent 4 decades in academia. Books lined every wall from floor to ceiling, their spines showing titles in multiple languages. Papers covered the desk in organized chaos, and a blackboard on one wall was filled with equations that Marcus recognized as relating to string theory. What caught his attention, however, was the small device sitting on a corner table. It was roughly the size of a basketball, made of material that seemed to shift colors as he looked at it. The surface was smooth but somehow wrong, as if it existed in more dimensions than his eyes could properly process. "Do not stare at it too long," Gregory warned. "It can give you a headache." Marcus tore his gaze away from the device and looked at the professor. "What is it?" "That is part of what I need to explain," Gregory said. He gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Sit down. What I am about to tell you is classified at the highest levels of government. You will need to sign documents. You will need to agree to conditions. Your life will change in ways you cannot imagine." Marcus sat slowly, his heart beginning to beat faster. "I am listening." Gregory leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled under his chin. 17 years ago, humanity made first contact with an alien civilization, actually with 3 alien civilizations working together as something they call the collective. The news was suppressed, kept from the public because the government feared panic and chaos. Marcus felt his mouth go dry. "You are serious?" "Completely serious," Gregory replied. He turned his computer monitor so Marcus could see it. The screen showed images that made Marcus's brain hurt to process. Beings that looked like they were made of crystal. Creatures with too many limbs and eyes that swirled like galaxies. Ships that seemed to fold space around them. "The collective came to Earth expecting to find primitives," Gregory continued. "They have protocols for first contact with developing species. Gentle introduction, careful guidance, slow integration into galactic society. They have done this dozens of times across thousands of years." Marcus could not look away from the images on the screen. "What happened?" "We shocked them," Gregory said with a slight smile. "We had developed nuclear physics. We had quantum mechanics. We had computers and satellites and a space program. We had done in a few thousand years what took each of them tens of thousands of years. Our rate of technological progress was unprecedented in their entire experience." "That is good though, right?" Marcus said. "That terrified them," Gregory corrected. "Imagine you are an ancient civilization that has been traveling the stars for millennia. You have seen species rise and fall. You understand the normal pace of development. Then you find a species that is advancing at 10 times, 20 times, 50 times the normal rate. A species that went from discovering electricity to splitting the atom in less than 200 years. What would you think?" Marcus understood immediately. "You would think we are dangerous." "Exactly," Gregory confirmed. "They were not sure if we were geniuses or anomalies or threats. So they did what they always do when they find a species that confuses them. They gave us a test," Marcus guessed. 5 tests, Gregory said. 5 problems in physics that represent the cutting edge of collective science. Problems that their best minds have worked on for generations. They told our governments that if we could solve these problems, it would prove we were ready to join galactic society. If we could not, we would remain quarantined on Earth until we matured naturally. Marcus leaned forward in his chair. "How long have we had these problems?" 3 years, Gregory said quietly. "I have been working on them for 3 years along with teams of the brightest physicists on Earth. We have consulted with Nobel Prize winners, with researchers from every major university, with experts in every field imaginable. And," Marcus prompted, "and we have made almost no progress," Gregory admitted. "The problems are unlike anything we have encountered. They require thinking beyond our normal frameworks, beyond our standard approaches to physics. We have thrown everything we have at them and barely scratched the surface." He looked directly at Marcus. "Then yesterday, I watched you solve a problem in 5 minutes that should have taken you hours. I watched you use an approach that I developed after years of research, and you used it like it was obvious, like it was basic." Marcus felt a strange sensation in his chest, like his heart was expanding and contracting at the same time. "You want me to look at these alien problems? I want you to solve them," Gregory said. "I will arrange a full scholarship that covers everything. Tuition, books, housing, food, a stipend for personal expenses. You will quit your 3 jobs. You will have access to any resource you need, any equipment, any consultation. You will work with me directly, and we will tackle these problems together." Marcus sat back trying to process what he was hearing. "Why me? There must be hundreds of physicists more qualified." "I have worked with hundreds," Gregory said, "some of the smartest people alive. And none of them think like you do. None of them see patterns like you do. When you solved that equation yesterday, you did not just get the right answer. You found a more elegant solution than the one I spent months developing. You did it in minutes while working 3 jobs while exhausted from night shifts. Imagine what you could do with proper support, proper resources, proper time. Marcus looked at the strange device on the corner table, then back at Gregory. What happens if I say no? Then you continue as you are, Gregory said. You work your 3 jobs. You pass my class with a C-. You graduate eventually and hopefully find work somewhere. You live a normal life. There is no shame in that. Marcus could hear the unspoken words hanging in the air. And humanity remains alone, and we miss our chance to join the galaxy, and these problems remain unsolved. He thought about his life, the endless cycle of work and study and exhaustion. He thought about falling asleep in lectures not because he was lazy, but because he had been awake for 20 hours straight. He thought about the textbooks he could not afford, the research papers he read on a security computer at 2 a.m, the future that always seemed just out of reach. When do we start? Marcus asked. Gregory smiled, and it transformed his stern face into something almost warm. Right now. He stood and walked to a filing cabinet, pulling out a thick folder. These are the non-disclosure agreements, security clearances, and various other documents you need to sign. Read them carefully. Take your time. This is not a decision to make lightly. Marcus took the folder and opened it. The first document was titled Classified Information Access Agreement in bold letters. He began reading, his eyes moving quickly over the legal language. Gregory watched him, noting how the young man's expression shifted from uncertainty to determination. 20 minutes later, Marcus signed the last document and pushed the folder back across the desk. I am in. Gregory gathered the papers and locked them in his filing cabinet. Good. We start tomorrow morning. 8 o'clock. I will take you to the facility where we do the real work. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Facility? You did not think we were working on alien physics problems in a university office, did you? Gregory said with amusement. The government built a secure research facility underneath this campus specifically for this project. Tomorrow you will see things that will change how you understand the universe. You will meet people who have dedicated their lives to this challenge, and you will look at problems that have stumped 3 alien civilizations for generations. Marcus stood, his legs feeling slightly unsteady. Professor, can I ask you something? Gregory nodded. Why did you really choose me? You could have offered this to students with perfect grades, with better attendance, with more credentials. Why a guy who works 3 jobs and barely shows up to class? Gregory was quiet for a moment before answering. Because I have learned something in 42 years of teaching physics. Genius is not about grades or attendance or credentials. It is about how you see the world. Some people look at an equation and see numbers. Others see patterns. A rare few see truth. He met Marcus's eyes. Yesterday I watched you see truth. I watched you understand something fundamental in seconds that took me months. That is not something you can teach. That is something you are born with. Marcus felt something warm spread through his chest, a feeling he could not quite name. Thank you, Professor, for seeing something in me. Do not thank me yet, Gregory said. This will be the hardest work of your life. These problems have broken the spirits of brilliant minds. They have driven people to quit, to doubt themselves, to wonder if humanity is truly capable of solving them. Marcus smiled, and there was something fierce in his expression. I have spent my whole life being told I could not do things. The elevator descended for what felt like minutes, though Marcus knew it could not have been more than 30 seconds. Gregory stood beside him in silence, watching the numbers count down on a digital display. Basement levels that officially did not exist appeared on the screen. B7, B8, B9. Finally, the elevator slowed and stopped at B12. The doors opened with a soft hiss, revealing a corridor that looked like something from a science fiction movie. The walls were polished metal that reflected their images like mirrors. Soft blue lights ran along the floor and ceiling, giving the space an otherworldly glow. Armed security guards stood at attention near the elevator, their expressions neutral but alert. Gregory nodded to the guards and they stepped aside, allowing him and Marcus to pass. The corridor stretched ahead for perhaps 50 yards before ending at a massive door that looked like it belonged on a bank vault. Gregory placed his hand on a scanner beside the door, then leaned forward for a retinal scan. A mechanical voice announced his identity and clearance level. The door began to open, its thick metal sections sliding apart with the sound of hydraulics and precision engineering. Beyond the door was a space that made Marcus stop in his tracks. The chamber was enormous, easily the size of a football field. with ceilings that soared 30 feet overhead. Workstations filled the space, each one equipped with computers and equipment that Marcus had never seen before. Scientists and technicians moved between the workstations, their voices creating a low hum of conversation and activity. On the far wall, massive screens displayed equations and diagrams that seemed to shift and change as Marcus watched them. In the center of the room stood something that dominated everything else, a holographic display that floated in the air without any visible support. The display showed 5 sets of equations, each one written in a strange combination of familiar mathematical symbols and alien characters that hurt to look at directly. Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. These were the problems. These were the challenges that the collective had left for humanity. "Welcome to Project Gateway," Gregory said. "This facility was built specifically to house our work on the collective's challenge. Everything you see here is dedicated to one purpose: proving that humanity deserves a place among the stars." He led Marcus toward the holographic display, and scientists paused in their work to watch them pass. Some looked curious, others skeptical. A few seemed hopeful. Marcus could feel their eyes on him and wondered what Gregory had told them about the new recruit. The holographic display grew larger as they approached, and Marcus could see the complexity of the equations more clearly. Each problem was labeled in English above the alien mathematics: Problem 1, Problem 2, and so on through Problem 5. "Problem 1, Gregory announced, gesturing to the first set of equations. "Faster than light communication without quantum entanglement. The collective has told us it is theoretically impossible according to their understanding of physics. Our job is to prove them wrong." Marcus stepped closer, studying the symbols and numbers. The alien characters were strange, almost organic in their flowing shapes, but somehow his mind could parse their meaning when he looked at them alongside the mathematical symbols. "These characters here," he said, pointing to a section of the display. "What do they represent?" "Dimensional constants," Gregory explained. "The collective operates naturally in 11 dimensions, while we humans are limited to perceiving 3 spatial dimensions and 1 time dimension. Their mathematics accounts for all 11. Marcus continued studying the problem, his eyes moving across the equations with increasing speed. He could feel his mind working, making connections, seeing patterns. The collective's approach was elegant but rigid. They were treating dimensional barriers as absolute walls, impermeable and unchangeable. But what if that assumption was wrong? What if the barriers between dimensions were not solid walls but something more like membranes? "They are starting from the wrong premise," Marcus said quietly. Gregory felt his pulse quicken. "Explain." "They treat dimensional barriers as absolute, as if they cannot be crossed or affected. But look at this section here." He pointed to a cluster of symbols. "This describes the interaction between dimensions at quantum scales. There is flexibility there, a kind of resonance." Marcus moved to one of the workstations and sat down, his fingers flying over the keyboard. Gregory watched as complex equations began filling the screen. "If you introduce a harmonic oscillation at the right frequency," Marcus continued, matching the natural resonance of dimensional intersection, "you create a temporary window. It would only exist for microseconds, maybe nanoseconds, but with proper encoding of information, that would be enough." Gregory leaned over his shoulder, studying the emerging calculations. Around them, other scientists had stopped their work and were gathering to watch. The young man's fingers moved with confidence, typing commands and pulling up simulation programs that normally took hours to configure. The approach required thinking about dimensions not as separate spaces but as overlapping fields that could interact under specific conditions. Marcus built a mathematical framework that described how to generate the precise frequency needed, how to encode information into the dimensional ripple, and how to detect it on the receiving end. The work was complex, requiring deep understanding of quantum mechanics, field theory, and mathematical physics. Gregory watched in growing amazement as the solution took shape on the screen. This was not just correct, this was brilliant. This was the kind of innovative thinking that earned Nobel Prizes. 3 hours passed in what felt like minutes. Marcus barely moved from his chair, his attention completely focused on the problem. He tested his solution through simulation after simulation, checking for errors, refining the approach, strengthening the mathematics. Gregory brought him water and food, which Marcus accepted absently without taking his eyes from the screen. The other scientists watched in silence, occasionally whispering to each other but mostly just observing. Finally, Marcus sat back in his chair and rubbed his eyes. Done. Gregory checked the solution carefully, running through the mathematics step by step. He checked it once, then twice, then a third time. Each pass through the equations confirmed what his instincts had told him from the beginning. "This is correct," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The scientists around them erupted into conversation. One woman, a physicist named Dr. Helen Rodriguez, who had been working on Problem 1 for 2 years, stared at the screen with tears in her eyes. "How did you see that?" she asked Marcus. "How did you know to look at dimensional resonance?" "I did not know," Marcus admitted. "I just looked at what they were doing and thought about what they were not doing. They were treating dimensions like separate rooms in a house. I thought about them more like different radio frequencies. If you tune to the right frequency, you can hear a signal that was always there but hidden. It seemed obvious once I thought about it that way." "Obvious," Dr. Rodriguez repeated, laughing through her tears. "Obvious. We have had teams working on this for 3 years. Gregory placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "How are you feeling?" "Tired," Marcus said, "but good. Ready for the next one." Gregory exchanged glances with Dr. Rodriguez and the other scientists. "The next one is harder," he warned. Problem 2 deals with energy generation from vacuum fluctuations. Problem 3 involves matter transmission without disassembly. Problem 4 concerns quantum foam manipulation. And Problem 5 is something else entirely. "Good," Marcus said, and there was fierce determination in his voice. "I want to see them all." Over the following days, Marcus settled into a rhythm at the facility. He arrived early each morning and worked late into the evening, taking breaks only when Gregory insisted. The other scientists gradually warmed to him as they saw his genuine enthusiasm and his willingness to listen to their ideas. He treated everyone with respect, from the senior researchers to the technicians who maintained the equipment. He asked questions constantly, wanting to understand not just the problems but also the context behind them, the history of human attempts to solve them, the collective's perspective on physics. Problem 2 took him a week. The solution involved creating a cascade effect in quantum vacuum that could extract energy without violating conservation laws. Problem 3 took 2 weeks because the mathematics were extraordinarily complex, requiring him to develop entirely new notation to express the concepts clearly. Each time he solved a problem, the scientists at Project Gateway celebrated. They were witnessing something unprecedented. A young man with no advanced degrees, no publications, no formal credentials beyond undergraduate coursework, solving problems that had stumped the best minds on Earth. Word spread through the facility about the young genius who thought about physics in ways no one had considered before. But as Marcus approached Problem 4, something changed. He spent 3 days studying the equations, running simulations, testing approaches. Nothing seemed to work. The problem dealt with extracting energy from quantum foam, the bubbling fabric of space-time itself. The mathematics were clean and the solution seemed straightforward. Too straightforward. Marcus sat in front of the holographic display late one night, alone in the facility except for security guards and a few night shift technicians. Marcus stared at the projection on the screen, his blood running cold. The solution to Problem 4 worked perfectly for approximately 6 months. The energy extraction from quantum foam was efficient, stable, and exactly what the collective's specifications required. Then the system began to destabilize. The quantum foam, stretched and manipulated by constant energy extraction, started to tear. Small rips appeared in the fabric of space-time, growing larger with each passing day. Within a year, the cascade effect would become unstoppable. Within 2 years, it would destroy everything within several light years, ripping apart planets, stars, and anything else caught in the expanding wave of destruction. "Gregory," Marcus called out, his voice tight. "You need to see this." The professor hurried over from where he had been reviewing data at another workstation. Marcus pulled up the long-term projections and showed him the timeline of destruction. Gregory's face went pale as he understood what he was seeing. "This is a trap," he whispered. "They are not just testing our intelligence. They are testing our wisdom. Whether we are smart enough to solve the problem, but also wise enough to see the consequences." Marcus nodded, his mind already racing ahead to possible solutions. A civilization that builds this without checking long-term stability would destroy themselves and everything around them. The collective does not want species like that joining them. The next morning, Marcus called an emergency meeting with all the senior scientists at Project Gateway. Dr. Rodriguez was there, along with Dr. Kenneth Park, who specialized in quantum mechanics, Dr. Alicia Grant, whose expertise was cosmology, and a dozen others who had devoted years to the collective's challenge. Marcus presented his findings, showing them both the elegant solution and the horrifying consequences. The room fell silent as they watched the projections play out, showing the collapse of space-time spreading like a cancer through the galaxy. "We cannot submit this solution," Marcus said firmly. "Even though it technically solves the problem as stated, it would be a death sentence for any civilization that implemented it." Dr. Park leaned forward, studying the data. "But if we do not submit a solution, we fail the test." "No," Marcus countered. "If we submit this solution, we fail the test. The real challenge is finding a safe way to extract energy from quantum foam. The collective knows this solution exists because they probably discovered it themselves millennia ago. They want to see if we are smart enough to find it and wise enough to reject it." Dr. Grant nodded slowly. "So we need an alternative approach, one that works with quantum foam instead of against it." "Exactly," Marcus confirmed. He had been awake all night thinking about this, drinking coffee and filling notebooks with ideas. "The obvious solution treats quantum foam as a resource to be exploited. We need to think of it as a partner to work with." For the next 3 weeks, Marcus worked harder than he had ever worked in his life. He collaborated with the other scientists, drawing on their expertise and experience. Dr. Park helped him understand the mathematical structures underlying quantum foam. Dr. Rodriguez contributed insights about energy transfer at quantum scales. Dr. Grant provided cosmological context about how such systems might behave over billions of years. Together, they developed an approach that was slower and less efficient than the obvious solution, but infinitely safer. Instead of forcefully extracting energy from quantum foam, they found a way to gently guide its natural fluctuations, harvesting energy from processes that were already occurring. The new solution was elegant in a different way. It worked with the fundamental nature of reality instead of fighting against it. The energy extraction was sustainable, stable over timescales of millions of years, and actually strengthened the fabric of space-time rather than tearing it. Marcus ran the projections forward as far as the computers could calculate, looking for any sign of instability or danger. He found none. The system was self-regulating, naturally balancing itself to prevent any catastrophic failures. When he finally presented the alternative solution to the team, there was a moment of awed silence before everyone started talking at once. "This is it," Dr. Rodriguez said, her voice filled with emotion. "This is what they wanted us to find. Not just a solution, but the right solution. The one that shows we think about consequences, not just capabilities." Gregory stood at the back of the room, watching Marcus explain the mathematics to the assembled scientists. The young man had transformed over the past weeks. The exhausted student who had struggled to stay awake in lectures was gone, replaced by a confident researcher who commanded respect from people decades older and infinitely more experienced. Gregory felt a fierce pride that he had not experienced since his own graduate students had gone on to distinguished careers. Director Patricia Wells arrived at the facility that afternoon to review the solution personally. She was a severe woman in her 60s with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that missed nothing. She had overseen Project Gateway since its inception, managing the political pressures from above and the scientific challenges from below. She listened to Marcus's presentation in silence, occasionally asking sharp questions that revealed her own deep understanding of physics. When he finished, she sat back in her chair and studied him for a long moment. "Mr. Cole, do you understand the significance of what you have accomplished here?" Marcus met her gaze steadily. "I think so. We have solved 4 of the 5 problems the collective gave us. More importantly, we have shown that we think about long-term consequences, that we value sustainability over short-term gain, that we are wise enough to reject dangerous solutions even when they are easier." Director Wells nodded slowly. "The governments of the world have been preparing for this moment since first contact 17 years ago. If we succeed, if we solve all 5 problems, humanity will be invited to join the collective. We will have access to their technology, their knowledge, their civilization. We will no longer be alone in the universe, and if we fail," Marcus said, "then we remain quarantined on Earth. The collective will check back in a few centuries to see if we have matured naturally. In the meantime, they will not share their knowledge or allow us to expand beyond our solar system. We will develop on our own, isolated from galactic society until they decide we are ready. Director Wells stood and walked to the holographic display where Problem 5 floated in the air like a ghost. This is the final challenge. The others were tests of scientific knowledge and wisdom. This one is different. Marcus looked at the display and felt his heart skip a beat. Problem 5 was not a mathematical equation or a physics challenge. It was a question written in perfect English. What is the purpose of intelligence? Philosophy, Dr. Park said quietly. They want philosophy. No, Marcus said slowly, his mind already engaging with the question. They want to understand how we think. Whether we see intelligence as a tool for domination or something else. Whether we understand that being smart is not enough. You need purpose behind the intelligence, direction, meaning. He thought about his own journey. About growing up in a neighborhood where most kids did not make it to college. Where the system seemed designed to hold people back. He thought about the professors who had doubted him. The bosses who had worked him to exhaustion. The endless struggle to prove that he belonged. He thought about the moment in Gregory's classroom when everything had changed. The moment when someone had finally seen past his circumstances and recognized his potential. And he understood what the collective was really asking. They did not want a philosophical treatise. They wanted to know if humanity understood what intelligence was truly for. Marcus sat down at a workstation and began to type. The words flowed from his fingers like water, each sentence building on the last. He wrote about intelligence as the universe's way of understanding itself. About how every conscious being was a mirror reflecting the cosmos back on itself. About how the purpose of intelligence was not domination or expansion, but comprehension and connection. He wrote about humanity's rapid development, explaining it not as superiority, but as necessity. Humans had evolved on a hostile world that constantly tried to kill them. They did not have claws or armor or venom. They had each other in their minds. They learned that intelligence was not individual, but collective. Every breakthrough built on thousands of others. Every genius stood on the shoulders of their entire species. This was humanity's gift to the collective. The understanding that progress came through cooperation, through sharing knowledge, through building bridges between minds. The purpose of intelligence, Marcus wrote, is to ensure that no being has to face the universe alone, to create something greater than the sum of its parts, to transform chaos into meaning and isolation into community. That is what humanity offers, not just our solutions but our understanding that we are all in this together. When he finished, Marcus sat back and read through what he had written. It was not long, perhaps 800 words total. But it felt right. It felt true. He looked up to find that the entire facility had gathered around him, reading over his shoulders and on nearby screens. Director Wells stood at the front of the crowd, her severe expression softened by something that might have been tears. "That is perfect," she said quietly. The waiting was harder than the work had been. Marcus tried to return to normal routines, but nothing felt normal anymore. He attended his other classes, though the material seemed trivial compared to what he had been working on. He helped Dr. Rodriguez write up their findings for internal documentation, carefully avoiding any classified details. He spent time with Gregory, discussing physics and the future and what it might mean if the collective accepted humanity. 3 days passed with no response. Then 4, then 5. Marcus found himself checking his phone constantly, waiting for the call that would summon him back to the facility. On the 6th day, he was sitting in the library trying to study for a chemistry exam when his phone vibrated. The message was simple: report to facility immediately. Marcus grabbed his backpack and ran. He made it to Anderson Hall in record time, took the elevator down to B12 and rushed through the secure doors. The command center was in chaos. Scientists were running between workstations. Screens displayed data that scrolled too fast to read, and alarms were sounding throughout the facility. Marcus found Gregory standing near the main holographic display, his face pale. "What is happening?" Marcus asked, his heart pounding. "They are here," Gregory said simply. He pointed to one of the large screens on the wall. The image showed Earth from orbit, the familiar blue and white sphere hanging in the black void of space. But surrounding Earth were 3 massive objects that had not been there before. They were ships, though calling them ships seemed inadequate. Each one was easily the size of a small city, their surfaces covered in what looked like organic patterns that shifted and flowed. They were beautiful and terrible, defying human understanding of engineering and design. The collective vessels had arrived. Director Wells stood at the center of the command center, issuing orders with calm efficiency. All personnel to stations. I want full analysis of those vessels. Communications team monitor all frequencies, and someone find out what they want. As if in answer to her question, a new message appeared on the screens. The text was in English, translated by the artificial intelligence systems the collective had provided years ago during first contact. The message was brief and formal. We acknowledge receipt of your solutions. We require verification. Send the primary solver to the lead vessel for evaluation. The room fell silent as everyone turned to look at Marcus. He felt his stomach drop. They want to meet me. Director Wells nodded. It appears so. The collective wants to verify that our solutions are genuine, that they came from human minds rather than stolen technology or lucky guesses. They want to meet the person who solved their challenge. Marcus swallowed hard. His mouth felt dry and his hands were shaking. When? Now, Director Wells said. They are prepared to transport you immediately. Marcus looked at Gregory, who stepped forward and gripped his shoulder. You can do this. You have already proven yourself to every human on this planet. Now you just need to prove it to them. 20 minutes later, Marcus stood in a special chamber deep in the facility. Technicians had fitted him with what they called a translation device, a small piece of alien technology that would allow him to communicate with the collective beings. They had briefed him on protocol, on what to expect, on how to behave. None of it seemed real. Marcus kept thinking this must be a dream, that he would wake up in his dorm room and discover that the past weeks had been an elaborate fantasy. Then the transport activated. The room around him dissolved into light and color that moved in directions his eyes could not follow. He felt himself stretched and compressed simultaneously, existing in multiple places at once. The sensation lasted for an eternity and an instant, and then he was somewhere else. Marcus stood in a chamber that defied description. The walls seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions, curving in ways that made his brain hurt. The lighting came from everywhere and nowhere, soft and gentle but impossibly bright. And standing before him were 3 beings that represented the collective. The first resembled a structure of living crystal, its body composed of countless facets that pulsed with inner light. Colors moved through it like thoughts, shifting from blue to purple to colors Marcus had no names for. The second being was vaguely insectoid but wrong in ways that suggested it came from a world with different physical laws. It had too many limbs that bent in impossible directions, and its eyes were like looking into swirling galaxies. The third being was almost human in appearance, which somehow made it more unsettling than the others. It had 2 arms, 2 legs, a head with recognizable features, but its skin was silver and seemed to shimmer, and there was something about the way it moved that suggested it existed partially in dimensions Marcus could not perceive. When it stepped forward, Marcus had the disorienting sensation of seeing it in multiple positions at once, as if time itself bent around it. The 3 beings regarded him in silence, and Marcus felt the weight of their attention like physical pressure. Marcus Cole, the silver being, spoke, and its voice was like music played on instruments that had never existed on Earth. The translation device in his ear converted the sounds into English, but some quality of the original remained. We are the arbiters of the collective. We have reviewed your solutions to our challenge. Marcus found his voice, though it came out smaller than he intended. And the crystalline being chimed in, its voice like bells ringing in perfect harmony. Your solutions have been verified. They are mathematically sound, physically feasible, and demonstrate understanding beyond what we anticipated from such a young species. All 5 problems have been solved correctly. Marcus felt relief flood through him, so intense it made him dizzy. Thank you. But the insectoid being clicked and whistled, its voice translated into words that seemed too simple for the complexity of the sounds. Correctness alone was not the test. Many species have solved these problems. Few have solved them as you did. Your approach to problem 1 showed innovative thinking, seeing connections we had not considered. Your solution to problems 2 and 3 demonstrated mathematical elegance. He paused, or at least Marcus thought it was a pause. But problem 4 revealed something more important. The silver being moved closer, and Marcus fought the urge to step back. You found the obvious solution first, did you not? The one that would work perfectly until it destroyed everything. Marcus nodded. Yes, and you rejected it, the being continued. You spent additional weeks finding a safer alternative, even though the obvious solution technically met our specifications. Why? Because, Marcus said, finding his confidence, a solution that destroys everything it touches is not really a solution. It is a weapon disguised as progress. We figured that was part of the test, to see if we were wise enough to look beyond the immediate problem to the long-term consequences. The three arbiters exchanged looks, communicating in ways Marcus could not perceive. The crystalline being pulsed with colors that might have been approval. Wisdom is rare, even among species who have traveled the stars for millennia. Intelligence without wisdom leads to destruction. The galaxy is littered with the remnants of civilizations that were brilliant but foolish. They solved problems without asking if they should. They built weapons without considering consequences. They expanded without thinking about sustainability. The insectoid clicked its mandibles. You chose the harder path, the safer path. This tells us more about humanity than any mathematical proof could. And problem 5, the silver being said, your answer to the question of intelligence is purpose. Tell us, Marcus Cole, did you write those words yourself or did others contribute? I wrote them, Marcus confirmed. But they represent more than just my thoughts. I have spent my whole life struggling against systems that tried to limit me, against people who said I was not smart enough or good enough. I have worked 3 jobs while studying physics. I have seen friends give up on their dreams because they could not afford to chase them. Everything I wrote about intelligence being collective, about cooperation and connection, comes from living that truth. The crystalline being chimed softly. You understand that genius does not exist in isolation, that every achievement builds on the work of countless others, that intelligence is not about individual superiority, but collective progress. Exactly, Marcus said. Humans did not develop fast because we are smarter than other species. We developed fast because we had to. Our world was hostile, so we learned to cooperate or die. We shared knowledge because that was the only way to survive. Every human breakthrough, from fire to fusion, came from people working together, sharing ideas, building on each other's work. The 3 arbiters were silent for a long moment. Then together they spoke in a harmony that transcended language. Marcus Cole, representative of humanity, your species has passed our challenge, not merely by solving our problems, but by demonstrating the wisdom to solve them safely, and the understanding to know why intelligence exists. The collective extends an invitation to humanity to join us as equals in exploring and understanding the universe. Marcus felt tears welling in his eyes. On behalf of humanity, I accept. Thank you. You honor us. The silver being stepped forward and extended its hand in a gesture that was remarkably human. We did not come expecting to be impressed, Marcus Cole. Marcus smiled, the biggest smile of his life. We passed, humanity is in. The command center erupted into cheers and applause that echoed through the vast underground facility. Scientists who had dedicated years to this project embraced each other, some crying openly, others shouting with joy. Dr. Rodriguez grabbed Marcus and hugged him so tightly he could barely breathe. Dr. Park was laughing and crying at the same time. Even the normally stoic Director Wells allowed herself a small smile. Gregory stood back, watching the celebration with satisfaction written across his weathered face. He caught Marcus's eye across the chaos and nodded once, a gesture that carried more meaning than words could express. The celebration lasted well into the night. Someone had smuggled champagne into the facility despite strict regulations about alcohol in secure areas. Toasts were made to Marcus, to humanity, to the future. Scientists who had worked in isolated competition for years now talked excitedly about collaboration with alien minds, about technologies they had only dreamed of, about questions they could finally get answered. Marcus found himself pulled from conversation to conversation, everyone wanting to shake his hand, to hear about the arbiters, to know what happened next. He answered as best he could, still processing the enormity of what had occurred. Near midnight, Marcus slipped away from the celebration and found Gregory in his office. The professor was sitting at his desk, staring at his computer screen but not really seeing it. Marcus knocked softly on the doorframe. "Professor." Gregory looked up and gestured for him to enter. "Mr. Cole, or should I say Ambassador Cole?" Marcus laughed and sat down. "Please do not. I am just a student who got lucky." Gregory shook his head firmly. "Luck had nothing to do with it. You earned this through brilliance, hard work, and wisdom. Do not diminish your achievement. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Marcus spoke again. I wanted to thank you for seeing something in me that day in your classroom, for not giving up on me even though I barely attended lectures, for giving me this chance. Gregory smiled. I should thank you. I have been teaching for 42 years and I had become cynical. I thought I had seen everything, that nothing could surprise me anymore. Then you walked into my life and reminded me why I became a scientist in the first place. The joy of discovery, the thrill of solving impossible problems, the satisfaction of nurturing genius. So thank you, Marcus Cole, for teaching this old professor something new. What happens now? Marcus asked. In practical terms. Gregory leaned back in his chair. Over the next few months, the collective will establish formal diplomatic relations with Earth's governments. They will send ambassadors, teachers, scientists. We will send our own people to their worlds. Technology transfer will begin, carefully and slowly to avoid disrupting our society too drastically. And you will be at the center of it all. The arbiters specifically requested that you serve as a liaison between human and collective scientists. Marcus felt a flutter of nervousness. I am not qualified for that. I am just an undergraduate. You solved problems that stumped Nobel Prize winners, Gregory pointed out. I think you are sufficiently qualified. Besides, qualifications are not just about credentials. They are about ability, wisdom, and character. You have demonstrated all three. Marcus looked down at his hands, still trying to accept the reality of his situation. Just a few months ago, he had been working security shifts and worrying about rent. Now he was apparently going to represent humanity to alien civilizations. The transition felt surreal. A thought occurred to him. Professor, do you think other humans can do what I did, solve problems like these? Gregory considered the question carefully. I think many humans have the raw intelligence. What made you special was not that you were smarter than everyone else, but that you were willing to think differently. You approached problems without preconceptions, without the baggage of traditional education telling you what was impossible. That kind of fresh perspective is rare but not unique. Given proper opportunity and support, I believe humanity has thousands of people who could achieve what you did. Marcus nodded slowly. Then maybe that is what we offer the collective. Not just our solutions but our approach. Our willingness to question assumptions and try new things. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. The news of contact with the collective was gradually released to the public, carefully managed to prevent panic. World governments worked with the collective to establish protocols and procedures. Scientists from across the globe gathered to prepare for the incoming flood of alien knowledge. Marcus found himself in endless meetings, briefings, and interviews. He spoke to presidents and prime ministers, to reporters and documentary makers, to students and scientists. Everyone wanted to know about the boy who had changed humanity's place in the universe. Through it all, Marcus tried to remain grounded. He continued attending his classes when he could, though his professors now treated him with a strange mixture of awe and uncertainty. He kept his dorm room even though he could have moved to much better accommodations. He stayed in touch with friends from before, people who had known him as just Marcus the struggling student rather than Marcus the alien liaison. They helped remind him of who he was beneath all the attention and expectations. One afternoon, Marcus was walking across campus when he heard someone call his name. He turned to see a group of students approaching, led by a young woman with determined eyes. You are Marcus Cole, the woman said. It was not quite a question. He nodded. That is me. Can I help you? We wanted to ask you something, she continued. The media keeps talking about you like you are some kind of superhuman genius, like you are special in a way normal people are not. But you were just a regular student a few months ago, right? Working jobs, struggling with classes. Marcus smiled. That is right. I am not special. I just got an opportunity and worked hard. So one of the other students spoke up, a young man with nervous energy. Does that mean other people could do what you did? If they got the same opportunity, absolutely, Marcus said firmly. Intelligence is not some rare gift that only a few people have. It is something we all possess in different forms. What matters is opportunity, support, and the willingness to work hard. I had professors who believed in me, resources that let me focus on studying instead of just surviving, and problems that challenged me to think in new ways. With those things, anyone can achieve extraordinary results. The students exchanged glances, and Marcus could see hope blooming on their faces. That matters to us, the woman said. Most of us come from backgrounds where people do not expect much, where the system seems designed to hold us back. Seeing what you did, knowing you came from similar circumstances, it gives us hope. Marcus felt emotion tighten his throat. That is exactly why I keep talking to reporters and doing interviews even though I hate the attention. Because I want people like you to know that where you start does not determine where you end up. Your circumstances are not your destiny. If you work hard and refuse to give up, you can achieve things that seem impossible. The students thanked him and walked away, talking excitedly among themselves. Marcus watched them go, feeling a sense of responsibility that went beyond just representing humanity to aliens. He was also representing the idea that anyone could rise above their circumstances, that intelligence and determination mattered more than privilege or connections. 2 months after first contact, the collective sent their first delegation to Earth. Marcus stood in a specially prepared facility, watching as 3 transport beams materialized alien visitors. There was a crystalline being like the arbiter he had met, an insectoid scientist, and several others representing different species within the collective. They were accompanied by human scientists who had been training on collective worlds, learning alien languages and customs. The reunion between human colleagues who had not seen each other in weeks was emotional, but Marcus found his attention drawn to the aliens themselves. The crystalline being approached him, colors rippling through its transparent body. "Marcus Cole, we meet again." Marcus bowed slightly, as he had been taught was appropriate. "Welcome to Earth. I hope your visit is productive." The being chimed in what the translator rendered as amusement. "We have much to discuss. The collective has prepared research proposals for collaboration. Problems that have challenged us for centuries. We are curious to see what fresh perspectives humanity might bring." Marcus smiled. "We are eager to learn from you as well. Your civilizations have been studying the universe for thousands of years. We are just getting started." "True," the being chimed, "but sometimes the student teaches the master. Your solutions to our challenge opened new lines of inquiry for our own researchers. We have been exploring the implications of your dimensional resonance theory for faster-than-light communication. Early results are promising, more promising than anything we have developed in millennia of research." Marcus felt a surge of pride mixed with humility. That is what makes this partnership so valuable. We bring different perspectives, different ways of thinking. Together, we can achieve things none of us could accomplish alone. Over the following weeks, Marcus worked closely with the collective scientists. He found the experience both exhilarating and humbling. 6 months after humanity joined the collective, Marcus stood in a lecture hall that had become legendary. This was the same room where Gregory had challenged him, where everything had begun. But now the audience was different. The seats were filled not just with human students but with beings from across the galaxy. A crystalline scholar sat in the front row, its faceted body refracting the afternoon light into rainbow patterns. 2 insectoid researchers occupied the middle section, their multiple limbs taking notes on devices that floated in the air. Near the back, a silver-skinned diplomat observed with those unsettling eyes that seemed to see in multiple dimensions. Gregory had invited Marcus to give a guest lecture on the solutions to the collective's challenge. The invitation had felt like coming full circle, returning to where his journey began. Marcus stood at the front of the room, feeling nervous despite all his experience over the past months. Speaking to aliens was one thing. Speaking about his work to a mixed audience of humans and aliens while trying to bridge the gap between their different perspectives was something else entirely. He took a deep breath and began. "Thank you all for coming. When Professor Hammond first challenged me in this room, I had no idea where it would lead. I was just a tired student trying to pass a physics class while working 3 jobs. Now I stand here as a representative of human collective collaboration, and the journey still feels surreal." Marcus clicked to his first slide, showing the original 5 problems the collective had presented. These challenges changed humanity's future. But more importantly, they taught us something about ourselves and about the nature of intelligence across species. He walked through each problem, explaining not just the solutions, but the thinking behind them. For the human students, he broke down complex concepts into understandable pieces. For the collective scholars, he highlighted where human intuition had differed from traditional approaches. The crystalline being in the front row pulsed with colors that the translation system rendered as approval. Marcus found himself relaxing as he talked, falling into the rhythm of teaching. This was sharing knowledge, building understanding, exactly what intelligence was meant for. The most important lesson from these problems, Marcus said, was not about physics. It was about wisdom. Problem 4 taught us that the correct answer is not always the obvious answer. Sometimes the harder path is the only responsible path. A young human student raised her hand. How did you know the obvious solution was wrong? Marcus smiled. I almost did not. I was ready to submit it until I ran long-term projections. The math looked perfect in the short term, but over years it would have caused catastrophic failure. That is when I realized the collective was not just testing our intelligence. They were testing our foresight, our responsibility, our wisdom. One of the insectoid researchers clicked a question. What advice would you give to young scientists, both human and collective, who wish to make similar breakthroughs? Marcus thought carefully before answering. First, question assumptions. Just because something has been done a certain way for centuries does not mean it is the only way or the best way. Second, seek diverse perspectives. The breakthroughs came from combining human intuition with collective knowledge. Neither alone would have been enough. Third, remember that intelligence serves a purpose beyond itself. We solve problems not just to prove we can, but to make the universe better for all conscious beings. After the lecture, students and scholars crowded around Marcus with questions. The humans wanted to know how they could contribute to human collective research. The aliens wanted to understand more about human thought processes. Marcus answered as best he could, but eventually Gregory rescued him from the crowd. Come on, the professor said with amusement. You need a break. They walked together across campus, past buildings that now housed alien visitors, past students of a dozen species studying together. Zenith University had become a truly galactic institution, and the change still amazed Marcus every time he saw it. Professor, Marcus said as they walked, do you ever think about how different things would be if you had not called on me that day? If you had just let me sleep through your lecture? Gregory chuckled. I think about it often. The entire course of human history pivoted on that moment. But I also think it was inevitable in some way. You had the ability and the determination. If not my classroom, then somewhere else, somehow else, you would have made your mark. Marcus was not sure he agreed, but he appreciated the sentiment. They stopped at a coffee shop that had adapted to serve beverages suitable for multiple species. Marcus ordered his usual coffee while Gregory got tea. They sat at an outdoor table, watching the campus life flow around them. A human student was explaining calculus to a crystalline being. Two insectoid scholars were arguing about quantum theory with a human professor. The scenes that would have been unimaginable a year ago were now everyday occurrences. This is what I hoped for, Gregory said quietly. Not just first contact, but true integration. Learning from each other. Growing together, Marcus nodded. The collective has been traveling the stars for thousands of years, but they have been doing it the same way for most of that time. Humanity is shaking things up, making them reconsider old assumptions, and in return we are learning at an accelerated pace. It is a good partnership. Better than good, Gregory agreed. It is transformative, for both sides. He sipped his tea thoughtfully. I received a message this morning from the Collective Science Council. They want to offer you a permanent position. Marcus raised his eyebrows. Doing what? Leading a new research initiative. Humans and collective scientists working together on the biggest questions in physics. Things like the nature of dark matter, the possibility of parallel universes, the origins of consciousness. They specifically want you because you have proven you can bridge the gap between our different ways of thinking. Marcus felt excitement and anxiety in equal measure. That sounds incredible and terrifying. Both, Gregory confirmed with a smile. But that is what makes it worth doing. The easy challenges are not the ones that change the universe. Over the following weeks, Marcus considered the offer carefully. It would mean leaving Earth for extended periods, living on collective worlds, working with alien minds on problems that might take decades to solve. It would mean giving up any pretense of a normal life, but the opportunity to push the boundaries of knowledge, to help build understanding across species, was impossible to resist. He accepted the position, and preparations began for his departure. The news spread quickly through both human and collective communities. Marcus Cole, the student who had changed history, was now taking the next step in his extraordinary journey. The night before he was scheduled to leave, Gregory hosted a small gathering at his home. Dr. Rodriguez was there, along with Dr. Park, Dr. Grant, and several other scientists who had worked on Project Gateway. The crystalline arbiter that Marcus had first met attended. along with a few other collective representatives. They shared food and stories, laughing about the chaotic early days of collaboration when neither side fully understood the other. Marcus felt grateful for these people who had supported him, challenged him, and helped him grow. As the evening wound down, Gregory pulled Marcus aside. "I wanted to give you something." He handed Marcus a small box. Inside was a piece of chalk worn smooth from use. "This is from that first day," Gregory explained. "When you solved the equation on my blackboard, I kept it as a reminder of how wrong first impressions can be. I saw a lazy student. I should have seen potential. Now I want you to have it as a reminder of where you started and how far you have come." Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Thank you, Professor, for everything." The next morning, Marcus stood in the transport chamber deep beneath Zenith University. His friends and colleagues had gathered to see him off. Gregory stood at the front of the crowd, pride evident on his weathered face. Dr. Rodriguez wiped at her eyes. The collective representatives waited patiently, ready to escort Marcus to his new life among the stars. Director Wells stepped forward to shake his hand. "You represent the best of humanity, Mr. Cole. Your intelligence, your wisdom, your character make us proud out there." "I will try," Marcus said. "That is all we can ask," she replied. The transport activated, and Marcus felt that familiar sensation of being stretched across dimensions. When reality solidified again, he was standing in a chamber on a collective vessel in orbit above Earth. Through a massive view screen, he could see his home planet hanging in the void, blue and white and beautiful. He had left behind everything familiar to chase the unknown. But as he turned to meet his new colleagues, alien scientists eager to work with the human who had changed everything, Marcus felt no fear. Only excitement for the discoveries ahead. A silver-skinned collective researcher approached him, its form shimmering slightly in the ship's strange lighting. "Marcus Cole, welcome to Zenith Station. We have prepared laboratories for you and assembled teams from across the collective. We are eager to begin work." Marcus smiled. "So am I. What is the first problem we are tackling?" The researcher made a gesture that might have been excitement. "Dark matter composition and interaction. We have theories but no conclusive evidence." 5 years after humanity joined the collective, Marcus Cole returned to Earth. He stood in the transport chamber deep beneath Zenith University, the same place he had departed from, though it felt like a lifetime ago. The chamber materialized around him, and he took his first breath of Earth air in months. It smelled different than he remembered, or maybe he had simply grown accustomed to the artificial atmospheres of space stations and alien worlds. Gregory was waiting for him, older now with more gray in his hair but still standing straight and alert. The professor smiled broadly when he saw Marcus. "Welcome home." Marcus embraced his old mentor, feeling genuine warmth. "It is good to be back, even if just for a visit." They walked together through the facility, and Marcus noticed the changes. New equipment filled the laboratories, technology that combined human ingenuity with collective science. The staff had tripled in size, with humans and aliens working side by side on dozens of projects. The entire facility hummed with productive energy. Gregory had been sending him updates, but seeing the progress firsthand was different. "You have been busy," Marcus observed. "We have had good teachers," Gregory replied. "Your regular reports on collective methods have been invaluable, and the alien scientists you send to work with us bring perspectives we never would have developed on our own." They emerged from the underground facility into the bright afternoon sunlight. The campus had changed as well. New buildings designed to accommodate multiple species, gardens that grew plants from a dozen worlds, students of every description moving between classes. It was beautiful and strange, and exactly what Marcus had hoped humanity would become. Gregory led him to Anderson Hall, to the lecture room where everything had begun. The room was packed, standing room only, with hundreds of people eager to hear Marcus speak. The audience was mixed, human and alien together. Marcus saw familiar faces. Dr. Rodriguez, now leading her own research team. Dr. Park, who had just published a groundbreaking paper on quantum consciousness. Students he had met years ago, now advanced in their studies. And new faces. Young people who had grown up in a world where contact with aliens was normal. Marcus took his place at the front of the room, feeling the weight of their attention. "Thank you all for coming. 5 years ago, I stood in this room as a struggling student who could barely stay awake through lectures. Professor Hammond challenged me changed my life and inadvertently changed the course of human history. Today I want to talk about what we have learned since joining the collective and where humanity goes from here. He clicked to his first slide, showing images of the research station where he worked. This is Zenith Station, home to scientists from 17 different species working on problems that affect the entire galaxy. He walked them through the major breakthroughs of the past 5 years. Human researchers working with crystalline mathematicians had cracked the dark matter problem, revealing that it was not matter at all, but interactions between dimensions. A collaboration between insectoid biologists and human geneticists had developed techniques to cure diseases that had plagued the collective for millennia. Earth engineers had revolutionized collective ship design, making faster-than-light travel more efficient. The contributions went both ways, with humanity learning technologies that would have taken centuries to develop independently. But the most important achievements, Marcus explained, were not technological. They were cultural. We have learned to communicate across species barriers. We have learned that intelligence takes many forms, all valuable. We have learned that diversity of thought leads to better solutions than homogeneity. The collective has been enriched by human perspectives, and humanity has matured through exposure to alien wisdom. A young woman in the front row raised her hand. What advice would you give to students like me who want to contribute to this new era? Marcus smiled. First, never stop learning. The universe is vast and complex, and there is always more to discover. Second, embrace different perspectives. The biggest breakthroughs come from combining ideas from multiple sources. Third, remember that intelligence serves a greater purpose. We do not solve problems just to prove we are smart. We solve them to make life better for all conscious beings. And finally, never let anyone tell you that you cannot achieve something because of where you come from or what you look like. I was a kid working 3 jobs, barely passing classes. If I can represent humanity to the galaxy, you can do anything you set your mind to. The lecture lasted 2 hours, with Marcus answering questions about everything from advanced physics to life on alien worlds. He talked about the challenges of working with beings who thought in dimensions humans could not perceive. He shared stories about cultural misunderstandings that had become learning opportunities. He discussed the ongoing projects at Zenith Station, including attempts to map parallel universes and efforts to understand the nature of consciousness itself. The audience listened with rapt attention, dreaming of their own futures among the stars. After the lecture, Marcus was surrounded by students wanting advice, scientists seeking collaboration, and journalists requesting interviews. He spent hours talking to everyone, remembering how much a few words of encouragement had meant to him when he was starting out. Finally, as evening approached, Gregory rescued him again. Come on, there is someone who wants to see you. They drove across the city to a modest apartment building. Gregory led him to the 3rd floor and knocked on a door. A woman answered, middle-aged with kind eyes and the same determined expression Marcus saw in his mirror every morning. Mom, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. He had spoken to her regularly over video calls, but seeing her in person after so long away made him realize how much he had missed her. She pulled him into a fierce hug. My baby, off saving the universe. She stepped back to look at him properly. You have grown. Not taller, but different. More confident. Marcus laughed. Living in space will do that. Come in, she said, ushering him inside. I made dinner. Your favorites. Over a meal of home-cooked food that tasted better than anything the collective's advanced synthesizers could produce, Marcus told his mother about his adventures. She listened with pride and occasional worry, asking questions that showed she understood more than he gave her credit for. I am proud of you, she said finally. Not because you are famous or important, though those things are nice. I am proud because you stayed true to yourself. You could have let all this attention change you, make you arrogant or cruel. But you are still my Marcus. Still kind, still working hard, still trying to help people. That means more to me than all the alien awards in the galaxy. Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. Thank you, Mom, that means everything. She squeezed his hand. Just promise me you will come visit more often. Working among the stars is important, but do not forget where you came from. The next few days passed in a blur of activities. Marcus visited his old neighborhood, where kids now played with toys based on collective technology. He spoke at schools inspiring the next generation. He met with government officials to discuss Earth's role in galactic politics. He toured research facilities and was amazed by how far human science had advanced. Everywhere he went, people treated him like a hero. But Marcus never forgot that he was just someone who had been given a chance and worked hard to make the most of it. On his last day before returning to space, Marcus and Gregory stood together on the roof of Anderson Hall, looking out over the campus and the city beyond. The sky was filled with traffic now, human vehicles mixing with alien ships in carefully managed flight paths. Lights from dozens of species illuminated the night. It was a view that would have been impossible just 5 years ago. "We did it," Gregory said quietly. "We really did it. We proved humanity deserves a place among the stars." Marcus nodded. "But the work is just beginning. We have so much to learn, so many problems left to solve. That is what makes it exciting." Gregory turned to face him. "I have been thinking about that day in my classroom. If I had not called on you, if I had let you sleep through the lecture, would someone else have stepped up? Would humanity have found another way?" Marcus considered the question. "I think so. Humanity is full of brilliant people just waiting for opportunities. I happened to be in the right place at the right time with the right professor who believed in me. But there are thousands of others like me. Maybe millions. Our species is not special because of individuals. We are special because of our collective potential, our ability to work together, our refusal to give up." "That is what I told the collective," Gregory said. "When they asked me to evaluate humanity's readiness for galactic society, I told them we are a young species, impulsive and sometimes foolish. But we are also adaptable, creative, and determined. We learn quickly. We work together across barriers that divide us. We dream of better futures and then build them. Those qualities make us valuable partners. Not despite our youth, but because of it." Marcus smiled. "And they believed you." "They believed you," Gregory corrected. "Your solutions proved my words true." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the city lights below. Finally, Marcus spoke. "I need to ask you something. When you challenged me that day, were you really trying to humiliate me, or did you see something in me?" Gregory chuckled. "Honestly,